Okay, good evening everybody. Darryl here from Select Driving School. Going to talk to you tonight about defensive driving and in particular the Smith's defensive driving system. So hold on a minute, just make sure everything's working as it should do. Okay. So, as well as Facebook, you're going to find me on Instagram, Twitter, Google Business with regular updates on all of those. I've also got my website. Just did post a comment up there with the address of that, but I'm not quite sure why that's not appearing yet. But hopefully the comments will start appearing. Now, there we go. Yeah. So we're going to run the usual format tonight. I'm inviting the Q&A, so you can put any questions you've got in via comments. I'll answer as I talk. And what I'd also like is if you could please, or what I'd also ask is if you could please like, comment or share the video. It all helps it increase the audience. So just before I go into the main subject tonight, just a very quick update about what's happened this week. Obviously we all heard Boris speaking to us on Sunday, and hopefully by the end of Monday we all had some clarity as to what he was talking about, and you also got some idea as to how it affected yourselves. In the case of driving instructors, the general consensus seems to be at the moment that we're going to fall into phase 3. So that's along the likes of hairdressers, etc. Because of the inability for us to socially distance, it's not something that we can start teaching at the moment. So we're looking probably at July. We are awaiting for some confirmation from the DVSA. Currently they are still suspending driving tests until near the end of June, but my personal expectation is that we're going to see that pushed back a bit further, which does mean unfortunately that anybody who had their test rearranged from sort of March and April towards the end of June will probably find it gets rearranged again. But what they are doing at the moment is they're not allowing people to book or change their tests so that they can prioritise those people who get affected by the current crisis. As soon as I get information that's a bit more firm than what I think might be happening, I will try and update people via textbook, via my website, etc. So, move on to the main subject tonight, which is defensive driving. So just before I talk in detail about defensive driving, I just want to set it into context. And so set it into the context of the overall learning to drive. Now in the UK, quality driving tuition is underpinned by what is known as the Goals for Driver Education matrix, and this has 5 levels. Okay, I'm just going to post up what those 5 levels are. So level 1 is vehicle control and manoeuvring, and level 2 is the mastery of traffic situations. Now in the UK it would be possible to pass your driving test by just limiting yourself to levels 1 and 2 in terms of your learning to drive, because you might need a bit of luck, because if you are effectively doing things by rote and what you've been taught, but not being able to apply too much of your own thought process to it, then if you get a relatively quiet driving test, you could pass. But obviously what I'm alluding to there is the fact that there is much more to driving than simply being able to control the car and understand and apply the highway code. And that's where we start to move up through the levels. So level 3, the goals and context of driving, this really is about journey planning, and again thinking about how you're going to make your journey safe. Who are you taking with you? Where are you going? All those sorts of things. Is it the best way of travelling? Level 4, personal goals for life and skills for living. So what we're really talking about here is self-awareness and control. So it's really about your attitude when you're on the road and in life generally. So that again plays a big part in how well you can drive, because if you've got a good attitude, or if you're aware of yourself as to when you're not in a fit state to drive, that will make you a safer driver. Hopefully it will also stop you becoming somebody who's subject to road rage. And then finally, the social environment, and this is where we really start thinking about roadcraft, and it includes defensive driving. So as I say, to set defensive driving into context, we're talking right at the highest levels of the matrix, the GDE. And when you're looking at, for example, emergency service drivers, that what sets them apart from other drivers is their ability to operate at that high level and really anticipate and understand what's going on around them and ahead of them, and to make safe progress whilst being able to get to wherever they need to be quickly. In terms of developing that, obviously we'll try to do that in driving lessons, but it's taking up opportunities such as these Facebook sessions, giving proper thought to your home study, and that's really going to help you develop levels 3 to 5. In a driving lesson, sometimes there's that much going on that it's quite hard for yours to be able to assimilate things, to really apply some of these more softer skills. So taking time away, especially once you're a bit prior to passing your test, will help you to develop these skills, and it's going to make you a better and a safer driver. And if you can master it and really bring it on, it's going to increase your chances of passing your driving test with flying colours. So, the Smiths Defensive Driving System. In essence, I would summarise defensive driving as combining your ability to spot and anticipate hazards with the ability to control and position your car in such a way that you neutralise risks before they affect you adversely. The more innate, natural, automatic and subconscious this can be, then the better driver you will become, and safer again. Now, to some extent, it's an art rather than a science, but it is one that can be taught, and that is where the Smith system plays a big part. So, as I say, the main thing I would emphasise there is, if you think back to your current learning to drive, you're doing the theory test, and part of that is hazard perception. Being able to spot hazards early is one half of defensive driving. It's how you're able to then adapt and react and get ready for those hazards that's really going to determine how good a driver you can be. So the Smith system is split up into 5 keys, and they're designed to provide drivers with the knowledge and the skills to create 3 important things when you're driving. Space to manoeuvre your vehicle away from conflict, visibility to detect danger and the potential for conflict with another vehicle or fixed object early, and time to react to volatile and complex driving environments. So what exactly are the 5 keys that you can keep in mind, and as a result help you to navigate the road safely? So firstly, aim high in your steering, so looking well ahead. Second, get the big picture. Try and take into account everything that you're seeing and how things could unfold and affect you. Thirdly, keep your eyes moving. Don't just look in one place. Use the peripheral vision as well as what you can see forwards, as well as your mirrors. 4, leave yourself an out. Okay, so this is about having somewhere to go if you need to. And 5, make sure that other people can see you. So that's very important, and would really hopefully give you good reason and good food for thought as to why things like your mirrors, your signals, etc. are so important. So let's go through those one at a time. So first of all, key one, aim high in your steering. So as human beings, our eyes are basically designed to work for us at walking speed. Driving a car is not something that is natural, it's something that we've been able to create for ourselves, and as a result we're starting to, challenge ourselves to be able to deal with these faster moving situations. The average person is not adjusted visually or mentally to the higher speed of motor vehicles. To try and help you do this, what you want to do is to look ahead to where you will be at least 15 seconds into your future. So looking down the road and considering what's coming up. So if you're on a motorway, for example, the further ahead you can look, the better you can adapt to your speed so that you don't necessarily get involved in traffic jams, and so that you can also slow down early, not necessarily having to jump on the brakes because you were travelling too close to the car in front, or you weren't aware that cars maybe as much as half a mile down the road are already slowing down. When you're in town, looking ahead, spotting the fact that there are traffic lights. A lot of these things we've talked about in the last few weeks when we talked about faults on driving tests, etc. It's usually a lack of awareness and a lack of planning that causes things to get out of hand. A 15-second eye lead time provides advance warning and gives you an additional margin of safety, because if you're seeing and recognising what you're seeing, you're already hopefully taking into account how to deal with it. Usually that's going to involve slowing down a bit, giving yourself a bit more time as you approach to assess things and then move around if you need to. It's also going to give you a chance to see what's going on around you. Use your mirrors, use your blind spots. Again, another good example of going back to the motorway or dual carriageway. Although a lot of learners don't go on the motorway, you are allowed to once you get to a certain standard, but you are allowed to go into dual carriageways, and hopefully most of you will have that opportunity. When you're on a dual carriageway, you're going to have slip roads, and these are places where other people join the motorway. Join the motorway or the dual carriageway. Again, if you spot those early, you can spot the signs telling you there's a slip road coming up, or if you can recognise the road features, you'll know that that's the case. You should be taking the time to assess what's going on in your outside lane to your right, because it may be that you're going to need to move over. And again, a good defensive driver will already know that there's space to their right for them to go into, or that there isn't space to their right for them to go into, and therefore if somebody else comes on wants to join the dual carriageway, they're going to have to deal with that in a different way, possibly slowing down or allowing them to come on behind them. The further you can look ahead, the more efficient and the more economical your driving can be as well. So again, thinking about traffic lights, when we teach things like eco driving, the most important thing that you can do to save fuel is not stop. Okay, you hear lots of people talking about what gear to use and possibly coasting, those sorts of things. Some of these things will help, some of them are plain wrong, coasting being a good example, but not stopping is the biggest saver of fuel and the thing that's going to make your driving the smoothest and most enjoyable for your passengers. If you see well ahead that there's some traffic lights on red, then you can just ease off the gas, allow the car to slow down a bit and not necessarily stop. And as I say, because the car's moving, that's a much more efficient use of fuel than once you come to a stop at the lights or in any queue and you're just burning fuel for no good reason. So that's why we aim high in the steering, to look as far ahead as we can, try and spot the hazards and try and start to deal with them. The next thing is, second key, is to get the big picture. So you want to try and be aware of everything that's going on around you. So we're talking about scanning ahead, but don't forget about the sides and the rear. Make sure that you're taking advantage of your peripheral vision and also using your mirrors regularly. You should be checking at least one of your mirrors every 5 to 8 seconds. When I'm driving, I tend to find that the mirror that I check probably the most is the right-hand mirror, because I want to know what's going on the outside of me, and then obviously I will be checking the centre mirror and the left mirror when it's appropriate to do so. But the right-hand mirror for me personally is the one that I find most useful in helping me keep abreast of what's going on. Your peripheral vision will help you see what's going on to the sides. And this becomes more and more important the closer you get to a hazard. It might be a pedestrian crossing, especially a traffic light controlled one. You've done everything you should do, you've stopped at the lights, maybe you're first in the queue, you've allowed people to cross the roads, the light's gone green, you set off, and somebody makes a quick dash for it at the last second. Again, you're going to find this more in city centres than you probably do in Halifax, but that sort of thing tends to happen quite a lot. People will, just at the last second, just as the lights are about to change from amber to back to green, they'll make a quick dash, run across the road. And if you're not paying any attention to the sides, then you're potentially going to set off and then have to come to a stop again for them. So your peripheral vision is very important. And your eyes are really, really good at spotting movement. So, you know, if they spot some kind of movement, you should be drawn to it, then you can assess it, and then you can hopefully take action if needed. Constantly updating what you're seeing is important as well. As I say, we talked about the motorway. The motorway is a place where it's very easy to just let yourself drift off and not really concentrate. You've got to really look on the motorway and keep changing where you're looking. As I said, look well ahead, but use those mirrors, check those blind spots to help keep yourself from getting tired, and I'll come on to that in the next point as well, but keep your eyes moving. I always advise people, as well as checking the outside, is to look at the dials every so often, check the dashboard, just to help the eyes refocus and try and prevent some of the tiredness that can creep in. Don't focus on insignificant objects. So, you know, those things that can't help hurt you are not worthy of your attention for anything more than a brief moment. There are more important things for you looking at. Make sure that you're spotting those. Spot the clues as to what could become important as well. So stay alert for things that can assist you in making good, informed decisions. Any other motorists or pedestrians that are moving, watch out for the signs that a vehicle door may be about to open. Sometimes people will just open it a small crack before they swing it open. Look out for exhaust smoke, because, you know, if a car starts up suddenly, then the chances are they're going to move away. And if they don't drive as well as you do, if they don't check the mirrors, don't check the blind spot, they may pull out straight in front of you. Think about, I mean, we talk obviously when we're passing parked cars, we talk about the fact that, you know, we've got to be careful, the door could be open. The reality is that 99% of the parked cars that you pass are empty. The door's not going to open. We still have other hazards to think about, such as people stepping out from in between them. But again, if you're trying to really piece things together, what you will think about is the parked car that's just parked. So if you're following a car and he pulls over, what's he going to do next? Well, the chances are he's going to get out. So that's something that is more immediate and probable danger to you than the empty parked car. So think about those sorts of things. Look out under parked cars as well. Feet, animals under parked cars. You'll often find cats and the like will sit under parked cars because the engine's warm, and they get warmth from it. That's why they stay there. Think of the time of day, the location, the weather. All these things can affect what could happen, and you want to be trying to make sure that you're adjusting your driving. Make sure that you try and eliminate visual barriers by establishing proper following distances. So if you get too close to the car in front, you're reducing what you can see ahead. So stay far enough behind those vehicles so that you can get the visibility necessary to make your own decisions. Don't rely on them. Especially larger vehicles. The larger a vehicle is, the more it's going to block your view. So, you know, driving up closely behind a bus, basically like driving behind a brick wall. You're not going to see anything. And if I can just try and get you to remember one thing tonight, it's these two words: what if? Okay? If you can just remember what if, that will help keep you safe. So in all situations, and this, doesn't just go for defensive driving, this does go for things like your maneuvers as well. What if somebody steps out? What if a car comes around that corner? What if the guy in front of me suddenly stops? Always trying to think about the worst case scenario and trying to keep that ahead of you, at the forefront of your mind. What if is it's the basis of risk management and risk planning, which is something that I've involved in my previous role. You'll find people locked in rooms all around the country, especially at the moment with everything that's going on with the coronavirus, and they're all planning to get back to work, and they will be going, what if, what if, what if, what if, to try and stimulate thinking, to try and make sure that they think about things that might happen and they deal with them. What if will keep you safe if you keep it at the forefront of your mind while you're driving. So, key 3, or third key, keep your eyes moving. If you focus on any object for too long, it's going to diminish your peripheral vision that we talked about earlier. This, what you get to the sides. You're going to find that that is not as effective when you're focusing on, staring in a particular place. So as you approach things, make sure you're scanning everywhere. Scan all your junctions before entering them. Scan your pedestrian crossings when you see them early on. Again, coming back to the motorway, scan ahead, see what's going on. Keep your eyes moving every couple of seconds. As I said, you're going to switch where you're looking into the far distance, then back to the middle distance, then a bit nearer, and then back again, then to your mirrors. Check your instruments every so often, make sure that you're keeping to the speed limit, etc. Keeping your eyes moving is also going to stimulate the brain, and an active mind is going to be able to help you resist the temptation to fall asleep or get fatigued. Try and make sure you avoid the distractions in your vehicle and those things that could take your mind off the most important job, which is controlling and driving the car. Again, we talked last week about the honest truth, and there it's important that you're not distracted by things like phones and friends, etc. And also, and this is really important as well, the only thing you can control is you. Okay, so in any given situation, that's all you can really control. But if you can anticipate and potentially avoid other drivers who look like they may be troublemakers from your point of view, that's going to help. Try and spot the telltale signs of a driver that's distracted. Again, the biggest distraction going now is the mobile phone. You can spot them a mile off, whether you're following them or whether they're behind you and you look in your mirror. You know, the obvious ones are the people driving along like this. Quite how they don't get pulled over by the police, I still don't understand. But you also know when they're sort of looking down like that every so often. You know they're checking something on the phone. Or if they're just talking animatedly and there's nobody else in the car, or if there is somebody else in the car. Either way, that means they're maybe giving more attention to their conversation than they are to the road. So you want to try to make sure that you don't fall foul of their inattention. So that might mean dropping back if you're behind them, or not getting too close to the car in front if they're behind you, to give them time to react when you do have to slow down. The fourth key is to leave yourself an out. And what we mean here is to try to make sure you always have space available to you. Okay? The safest position in traffic is when there are no vehicles around you. Okay? So, you know, if we're driving on a nice quiet day, I mean, as at the moment, if you do go out on the roads, you'll find that the traffic is very quiet. So those key workers that are allowed to take the driving test at the moment, I would imagine that they're getting a much more, I won't say easy, but they've got a higher chance of passing the driving test now than they probably would have, you know, in the middle of the usual rush hour traffic that we have. So obviously when there's no vehicles around you, it's going to be quite safe. But when you are driving, try and surround your car with a space cushion. Try and make sure there's space behind you, in front of you, to the sides as much as possible. Try and make sure good and early that you're getting in the right lane and you're adjusting your speed accordingly to maintain your space cushion. If you lose some of the space cushion, then try and work to at least keep the front and one side open. If you've got somewhere to go ahead of you or to the side, then you've got more chance of being able to avoid a problem should it occur. And another big one, and this is similar to trying to spot the distracted drivers, is try and avoid tailgaters. These are people who drive too closely behind you. If one is present, the chances of a collision is quite high. So it's a bit counterintuitive, this one, but if you have somebody driving to, if you're in a normal flow of traffic and you've got somebody driving too close behind you, what you mustn't do is to try and close up to the person in front, thinking that that will get you further away from the tailgater, because it won't. All that will happen is that the tailgater will stay with you, and now you're too close to the car in front and you've got three cars travelling too close together. So what you should do is to drop back, allow the car to ease off a little bit and stay a bit further away from the car in front. And that way, when you need to slow down because they're slowing down in front of you, you'll have more warning, and as a result you'll be able to give the tailgater more warning. So the final key in the Smith's defensive system is to make sure they see you. Okay, so if you detect the presence of potential danger early, that helps you. If you can make yourself visible, it will help other people to spot you. So make sure that you are using your signals properly. Make sure you're using them when you think they'll be recognised and understood. So it's not too soon, not too late. It's that Goldilocks moment. So you were talking there about things like your hazards, so your indicators, your hazard warning lights, your headlights, your brake lights, your horn, any hand signals. Try and make eye contact where you can. Don't take eye contact for granted if it is made. Make sure that whatever warnings you are trying to give are actually heeded. Again, coming back to the motorway, this is quite important. If you drive properly on the motorway, you'll use the left-hand lane more often than not. But you will still need to overtake people who are travelling more slowly in the inside lane, the left-hand lane, so you'll need to move to the middle lane. But a lot of people will do what we call middle lane hogging. Wombats, as I call them, won't move over because I'm too stupid. You'll need to indicate early if you see that you're coming upon a slower moving car, to say that you're going to need to use the middle lane to go past the slower vehicles. Once you've given your signal, have a look to see how the person who was potentially stopping you from pulling out, or could be stopping you from pulling out, how they react. They may slow down noticeably, in which case you know that they're hanging back to let you pull out. They may flash their lights at you. They may move over to the right-hand lane, leaving the middle lane now clear for you. Or they may do none of those things and they may carry on as though you don't exist. So you have to be sure that whatever warning you've given has been heeded, because if you just think, oh, I've given a signal, it's okay for me to move, that can also cause problems. So eye contact is valuable, but it's no guarantee against the unexpected. So those are the 5 keys in the Smith system. Those are the 5 things that you want to try to be doing to try and keep yourself safe. So again, we'll just reiterate those. Aim high in your steering. Get the big picture. Keep your eyes moving. Leave yourself an out. And make sure that others see you. Now, alongside those 5 keys, we also have 5 driving characteristics that you will need at a high level in order to be able to do these things. This is, part of learning to drive. You need to acquire a certain level of skill and knowledge, and then once you've got those, and then you also think about how to stay safe by using the defensive system, you can put the two together to make yourself a safe driver. So the first thing, you need knowledge. Good defensive drivers will have a knowledge of the traffic laws and the basics about their vehicles, such as how the brake system operates, how to read the gauges, the lights on the dashboard. They'll also understand the traffic laws, so the highway code, that for example. As a result, you'll understand what you should be doing, what other people should be doing, and that will help you to make better judgments. It's also important, for example, when you decide to go abroad, that you try and acquaint yourself with at least the most pertinent differences between driving in the UK and driving abroad. You may be used to doing certain things, and then abroad they may be used to doing things completely differently. One thing that I'm never certain of in different countries, and it's, no matter what research I do, I can never find a definitive answer, and this affects me more as a pedestrian than it does as a driver, but I'm not that sure about what the rules are for pedestrian crossings. Obviously in our country the onus is on the driver to give way to the pedestrians, but quite often abroad you will see a reluctance from drivers to stop, and a similar reluctance, certainly on my case, to step out. And I'm not sure if that's because they're just being impatient, because sometimes the Continentals are when they're driving, or whether the rule is different. So as I say, it's important that you have the knowledge, so that when you are driving abroad you know what to expect. Second thing, alertness. If you're not alert, it's going to be very difficult for you to drive in a defensive manner, because it takes concentration. We talked earlier about keeping the eyes moving. That helps with the alertness because it changes what you're focusing on, and it keeps your brain more active and will, as a result, keep you more awake and less susceptible to fatigue. But again, part of journey planning, if you're going to undertake a long journey, you don't want to set out if you're not alert, or you're overly tired, or you're upset, those sorts of things. So try to make sure you're alert and well rested, and not affected by any such things as drugs and drink, etc. So again, a lot of these things also come back to the honest truth we were talking about, things that can affect your ability to drive safely. The third characteristic is anticipation. Defensive drivers anticipate what may or may not happen. Again, coming back to how the examiner will judge you, some situations can unfold on a driving test and it's not cut and dried what you should do. There may be, as the saying goes, more than one way to skin a cat. Some ways may be better than others. The more you acquire knowledge and skills and good judgment, the better your decisions are likely to be made. But in the early days, inexperienced drivers will make judgments that are maybe not the ideal. However, they may be good enough. So you need to try and make sure that you're making safe decisions. When an examiner is looking at you driving, they're going to consider, was that a reasonable thing to do? Was it based on a reasonable assumption? They may even think to themselves, what would I do in this situation, and compare it to what you did, in helping them come up with a decision about whether you've committed a fault or not, and if a fault, how serious a fault. So a good driver is going to anticipate potential hazards from other motorists, pedestrians, weather and equipment, and take steps to minimise the risk. And as I said earlier, the most important two words are, say, if you take one thing away from tonight, it's what if. If you're constantly have at the forefront of your mind what if as a question, it's going to help you to force yourself to think about what's going on around you and be careful and steady where you need to be. So the fourth characteristic is judgment. A good defensive driver does not make risky manoeuvres. You're not going to try and pass unless it's safe to do so, and you're going to look for alternatives in any traffic situation. Another example of a good defensive driver would be again, coming back to thinking about what others might do, is being aware that although it might be the done thing for you to have priority, the other person may not give it. So a typical meeting situation, you're driving up to some parked cars. Now the parked cars are on the other side of the road. You're maybe even driving uphill. You would expect the driver on the other side of the road, who's also approaching the parked cars from the other side, the parked car, the obstruction being on their side, the normal rule of the road would be that they would give way to you. But there's no guarantee that they will, and a good driver, their judgment will be, again, to think, what if they don't stop? So slow down a bit, just in case they don't stop. And then if they don't, you're not forced into an awkward situation of trying to come down because it was your right of way. Trying to pick up the pieces afterwards is not as good as avoiding the issue in the first place. If, on the other hand, they do act as they should do, then you'll be able to just gently pick up your speed again, and there'll be no real loss of time to either of you. And the final characteristic of good defensive driving is skill. Okay, so a good defensive driver has the technical skills to drive a car safely in traffic without endangering others on the road and in various conditions. So, there are some people who are very skilled at controlling a car, but they're certainly not defensive drivers. You see them, they're the reckless sort of people who overtake you in an awkward situation. Again, if you look at my YouTube channel, you'll find plenty of examples of other drivers, some of which maybe, can drive a car very quickly, but that should be reserved for the racetrack. They shouldn't be doing it on the road. So you may have the skills to control the car, but if you're doing things that are reckless, that are not expected by other drivers, then I'm afraid you are not a good driver, and you're certainly not a good defensive driver. So you need the skill to be able to control your car. You need those skills to be able to adapt how you drive for different traffic conditions, different weather conditions. And again, that's all part and parcel of what we're learning at the moment, starting right down at the basics of getting the car moving. But you shouldn't be putting those skills to a risky use once you've mastered them. You should be driving in a sensible manner, and if you do want to get some thrills, then you should go away and do some off-road driving. You can get a lot of enjoyment doing off-road driving in the hills or in the forests, or you can go to a racetrack and learn how to drive circuit driving, or you can do stunt driving. I've done a couple of stunt courses, and I must say they're very enjoyable, and they do give you some skills that potentially could be useful in an emergency situation, for example, how to control a skid. So skill's important, but just because you know how to do a handbrake turn, for example, that's not something that you should be doing on the road. So that's the end of the talk tonight. As I say, we've gone through the Smith's defensive driving system, talked about the five keys to defensive driving, which I'll just run through one last time. So aim high in your steering, make sure you're looking well ahead, 15 seconds into your future. Number 2, get the big picture. So try and consider everything that's going on around you and what could be happening and what could happen next. Third key, keep your eyes moving. Try not to focus or stare in one particular area. Make sure you're using your peripheral vision as well as your mirrors. Leave yourself an out, very important. Have somewhere to go if an issue does occur. Leave space to the front of the car, behind the car and to the sides. As a minimum, make sure you've got space to the front and to at least one side. That will give you options should something happen. And finally, make sure that people see you. So use your lights properly, your horns, your indicators, etc. So just before I go, does anybody have any final questions that they'd like me to answer? So hopefully you found the video useful. If you do, then please click like to the video or to any of the comments. If you could comment, that would be great as well. I've got my YouTube channel where I'll be posting this later. Next week I'm doing something slightly different. If you'd like to take part in a driving quiz, then I'm going to be running a Facebook Messenger session where I'll be doing a driving quiz. Hopefully you'll find it fun and learn something. Some of it will help you with theory. Some of it is just general driving stuff that sort of helps develop the overall sort of appreciation for things. So I shall leave it there. Thank you all. Good night, and enjoy the rest of your evening.